In the dead of night, when the moon is high and ill winds blow, and the banshees cry and the moonlight casts an unearthly glow, arise, my love, with tales of woe.
Good evening. It is 12 midnight, the paranormal hour. Welcome to Ghost. I'm your host, Chief Lawson. Ghost is a podcast to discuss all paranormal and parapsychology subjects. You can find Ghost on all major formats, so tell your friends, tell your family. Come listen to Ghost. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is the midnight hour. It is time for Ghost. And tonight, our topic is emergency preparations. And this kind of came about with the cancellation of the 30th of January broadcast due to one of the biggest heavy snowfalls we've had here in about 20 years. And we couldn't get people in and couldn't get taping done. So, hey, we got thinking what better subject to work with. Tonight, joining me is Sarah Medley, our research manager and podcast producer.
Hello.
I have Heather Lawson, case manager and podcast director.
Hello.
And I have Eric Knight, our IT manager.
Greetings.
And we are starting off a little dry. We're not really drinking much other than pop. And we're going to get through this tonight and talk a little about things. And we're going to start off with some of the experiences our group has had. Now, Sierra and Eric didn't get lucky enough to be in part of this. And I tell you what, I think every group needs to think about, hey, if I'm going to an investigation, who's got my back while I'm out there and I've got my phones turned off so they don't interfere with the investigation? And what if? What if? There's a lot of what ifs. One of our first investigations back in 2000 was up in Zionsville. And we went up, did an initial investigation, decided we needed another night. So we scheduled the following weekend. What we didn't know was, and it wasn't predicted, there was a severe thunderstorm that developed over the 4-hour period. We drove up there, was setting up, and from the time that we heard the last forecast, which is 7, 8 o'clock, by the time 10 o'clock rose up, we had tornadoes in the forecast, and we had warnings. Unbeknownst to us, we're in a one-level building, and normally a good old-fashioned thunderstorm is not bad on an investigation. The static electricity seems to help create a media, to allow things to come in. The problem there is the roof and everything, it was coming down so hard, it was creating noise contamination. So we pulled off. We just decided we'd go back to Command Central and sit and wait it out because it was too much noise. It was overwhelming on the recorders. And about that time, I finally got a phone call that came through, and it was from one of the guy's wives who said, "Oh my God, are you guys okay?" And of course, he just seen it. He had it on silent and just saw it come up. He goes, "Yeah, why?" She goes, "There's a tornado in your area." She says, "It's coming right through there, right through Zionsville." And he goes, "When?" She goes, "About now, dummy." And, it's like, oh my God. So we started looking, and sure, of course, 2000, they didn't have quite as good weather radars on the phones or anything else. But sure enough, yeah, we had a tornado, and we heard sirens. We heard the tornado sirens go off. We heard first responders responding to it. I mean, we're all sitting around going, I wonder what that is,
What was that?
How close did it actually come to you?
It came within a mile of us. So, it was a fairly good brush. Took out power. And the funny thing is we did not know it took out power because we killed all the power in the building. We were, running dark. So when we started to pack up, that's when we started flipping switches and realized, guess what? We don't have power. And I remember Kevin, who is our subject matter expert, he went out back and came in. He was our tech manager at the time. He says, "You ain't gonna believe this shit. There's a giant oak tree. It took out the power back there. It's on the ground." And we all kind of went outside and looked, and it missed the vehicles, but it took the power out. So we called our contacts because I was just giving keys to lock up, and I said, "Hey, you guys need to know you don't have power in the building. And this was kind of a commercial building. And I said, there's an oak tree fell over the pole in the back. And they said, oh, no problem. And they said, the tornado didn't get it. I said, no. And I didn't want to tell them. We didn't even know it came in. But as we drove out, you could see some of the damage. And this also happened about, I don't have this one listed down here. I think it was in 23 as well. We were at Michigan Paracon. We had driven up, and it had been storming a little bit. We stopped in Lansing. There was a place there that served Cuban sandwiches. We always stopped there, all kinds of Cuban food, plantains. Oh, it was good. And, I mean, these are folks straight, they came into the country, opened this restaurant, and they cooked it the old-fashioned way, and it was good. And we knew it was raining, and we left, and it was raining when we crossed the bridge, and the evil bridge, as I put it, going over to the UP, and of course, I think Andrew was messing with me something about skid rates on water. I go, just drive the van, and we get across, and we get up and checked into our Airbnb, and we find out that we just missed tornadoes that came through Detroit. Well, Jason and Steve and Tango anyway was trapped at the airport. So was Patty Negri. So was Dave Schrader. They're all making YouTube videos, and I guess they had to go and seek cover. They put them in a tornado shelter inside the airport because it came through the airport runways, and they were delayed. I felt bad for the guys up Michigan Paracon because they had to go rearrange schedules, talking schedules. They were printing stuff out continually throughout the day and adjusting. So you had to constantly go back to the board to find out where your speaker you wanted to hear was going to be at. And some of the classes were paid for, had to be canceled. I think that was the year that Bram Stoker's grandson or great-grandson couldn't make it in.
That was the other.
Oh, it was another year.
When he was sick.
Oh, he's sick. Okay, I know there was several times that there were several people that couldn't get in. So, and people don't think about that. Those can crop up very quickly. Another case I love to talk about is the Acton case. We were out in Acton, and this was the weirdest setup we'd ever had because I'll tell you, we turned around and we got up in the parking lot. Well, just getting there, we had fog, and it wasn't that way when we left the house, but by the time we left the house, the fog rolled in, and I mean, you couldn't see. So I have my tech manager in the back seat with a GPS unit going, okay, you're coming up on a four-way here shortly, and then you go to the four-way, and you can't see much more than 100 feet radius, and you honk a few times and hope somebody that knows there's one there, and you go across it, and then you go a little further, and it was tedious. It took us, normally from where I was living up off 21st Street in Indianapolis, and it took probably 40 minutes to get there. It took us an hour and a half to get out there. So we get out there, and we park, and we're starting to bring equipment in, and all of a sudden, one of the guys goes, oh, shit. And I look down the driveway. It had this big driveway around the building. In the back, there's this huge dog, and I mean, like Great Dane huge. And he looks over at me, and he says, what do you think? And I go, just hellhound. Don't worry about it. And I laughed. It was somebody's dog, and it didn't bother us to even bark at us. It just stood there, and and it was just funny. But that whole night was really weird, and the fog broke about 2 a.m. and burned off a little bit. But oh my God, we couldn't see. If you went in the building, you couldn't see the vehicle. We had two vehicles on site, and you could not see either vehicle from where they were parked. So we made it a point, if you go outside, go in threes, not twos. We want to make sure 3 people at a time. So we've got, it's not that we're worried about getting lost in the fog, but since the dog was out, and it was an odd thing because after we got done, I asked the gentleman that owned the business, I said, I talked about this dog, and he says, I don't know anything about that dog. We've never seen that.
There's no dog out there.
Yeah, he says, I haven't ever seen that big a dog. He says, the neighbor, which we knew the neighbor next door as well, and he told me, he said, no, I don't know. He says, that's a big dog. No, I've never seen that one. So nobody did afterwards either. So that led a little bit of paranormal spin. In 2011, we were up in Beech Grove in one of the older buildings off Main Street. We went up to do an investigation, and it was a real neat investigation. But during the night, an ice storm come in that wasn't predicted. And I mean an ice storm. It laid down a 1/4 inch of ice. So we get ready to leave and we walk out and it looks like somebody's dipped all of our vehicles in water and sub-froze them. I mean, we have to get and we couldn't, all of our stuff's in the van. So we actually had a little bitty rubber mallet that we used to carry in the toolkit. So we're going around very carefully hammering, and you not only had to break the doorknob loose, you had to break the whole door loose on each vehicle. And we had 2 vehicles and they were both, and then once we got one door open, you could start it up. It took 40 minutes to warm up enough to get the ice where you could pop the ice loose and get it off the vehicle. Then we had to get home, and I had, as always, our people live all over. So when we got back to my place and everybody else picked up the regular cars, we had to do the same drill. I mean, it was horrible, but it was not predicted. We did not know that was going to happen. Fright Manor, that was in 2015. That was a heat issue. It kind of reminds me when we went to Waverly. It was ungodly hot. And what happened was the air conditioner broke down the building. And this is going to be a strange thing. The building's there, but the company isn't. The company was actually the Southport Softball League, and they had a theatrical haunted house. And the haunted house was actually haunted, And so they called us in, and we've never investigated. It had all the stuff, They shut it down throughout the year, and they would open it up at certain times to let people go through it. But especially their big thing was the FAA convention here in town around Halloween. But they powered down everything, powered down all the air compressors. I mean, this thing had Hollywood-style creatures and animatronics, and they powered everything down. And we had 2 problems that night. The heat was just, and we called them. They said, the air's not working. They go, oh, yeah, we've got to tell you, the air is broke. We got to get somebody out there. But, they didn't have a budget for it because this was for charity. And since it wasn't close to their opening time, I think it was like middle of July or August. I was
going to ask you, what time of year?
Yeah, it was like July or August. And we'd had one of these heat waves come in. So everybody's going outside. Well, we started with our instant command inside because up front they had offices they didn't use, and where they had break rooms and stuff. That's when we had our second problem. We found out they have a cockroach infestation, and our gear bags are on the floor. So I yell across the radio, say, everybody back to command now. I said, consider this emergency. And as we started picking, I remember I picked up one of the bags had our tripods in it, and 2 cockroaches took off underneath it. So I said, okay, we need to search the stuff, take every bag apart, make sure there's no critters, and then put it in a Suburban outside. We're moving Command Central outside. So we actually picked up unplugged everything, moved the DVR. We had cabling back then. Moved everything outside the door, and we're set up outside because we were so afraid of the cockroaches. Guys, I remember Jim Hampton, our tech manager, was still on with us. He hadn't retired yet. He sat down somewhere to do an EVP session, and he said the biggest freaking cockroach, it was probably 1.5 inches long, went right over his pant leg. It had crawled up his leg, and he didn't know it. Oh, no. And he came outside and did this jig, and I looked at him. I go, what's the matter with you? He goes, I had one just crawl up my leg. And, everybody started worrying about, he went inside and dropped his pants, waited for the ladies to make sure he didn't have anything else crawling around. It was just freaking him out.
Get it off!
Yeah, I mean, so it was interesting. So I guess you could say that's a 2-part, heat and, insect. And then LaPorte, which you guys just barely missed, we did the LaPorte Museum in LaPorte, Indiana, and we got done that night. It's probably about 3 a.m. And, it'd been fine, and they hadn't predicted much. And then all of a sudden came a torrential rain. That's when you realize your vehicles are 200 foot from the door or better. And, we're figuring out how we're going to get equipment in these vehicles. I mean, it's one of the hardest rains I ever saw. And the lady says, we got a loading dock.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, thank goodness, because they opened the door and I backed the truck all the way in and we loaded it. And then I would take people. There was another car, and I think Jennifer drove the other car. And so I had to take her out. Oh my God, everybody was soaked, and we usually normally stop someplace, at Denny's or someplace to eat. No, because Jennifer hit me on the phone. She said, you're not going to believe this. There's a tornado out, and they've had a funnel cloud touchdown not far from here. And she says, what are we going to do? Well, by that point, we had determined we needed someone that had our back, so we had Kevin. And I called Kevin. I go, dude, get on the radar and tell me what's going on. I'm up here in LaPorte, and I have software on my phone where he can come back and find me immediately on the phone. And he says, okay, I got you. He says, I said, guide us. So I've got him on the phone with a 3-way call with Jennifer, and we're plowing back. And, I'm driving in rain that I can't see anything. And it was funny because it was a semi. It kept wanting to stay with us because he could see our taillights. And then Jennifer the semi was really on her back, and then she was on mine. And we got home, but we just barely missed a tornado had went through, and we could see some of the damage. It was kind of like the one that went through up, because when we came back from the Paracon in Michigan, when we started back through Michigan, there was trees down. I mean, there was a load of damage that we saw that we had just barely missed. So, and in the last one, I kind of want to emphasize, we only had one vehicle breakdown, thank God, in our entire time. And I had a radiator hose that sprung a pin leak. And it was in the van, and we were heading north, and we made it up to, I think, Shadeland 71st when we had to pull off, start overheating, and I realized we had a pinhole in it. And I thought about patching it because I could patch it, but I thought, and then we had to drive 2 hours each way, and I thought that's a bad idea. So we came back to the house, rearranged, had some people come back and meet us there with vehicles, and then we took off. We managed to get the investigation done, but, we had to make some changes. So one of the things I want to bring out to everybody, out there is, especially other investigators, is if you're going to go out, be prepared. Always be prepared. I think having a subject matter expert that handles our weather, not only our solar weather, which sometimes can tell us if activity is going to be increased or decreased, but also that helps in case of emergency. That way, if a tornado goes through that area, he has a way of getting a hold of us to notify us. He's we call it in service overwatch. He's doing overwatch operations and, keeps our back while we've got focus elsewhere. And I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Chief, because I'm thinking, how do you prepare for a pop-up thunderstorm that produces a tornado? And the point there was having someone watching, and because you're focused on the investigation, you're looking for the most minute things. Your focus is trying to see, is that chair going to move or is it moving? You're not thinking about, is there a storm 20 miles away that's going to have a tornado? And it's, I never even considered having
blinders is the way to look at it. Yeah, you got tunnel vision. Yeah.
So having a subject matter expert who is watching, that's a great idea. I never would have even considered that.
I think we put him in. He wanted to retire, but he didn't want to retire. He had a lot going on, and he was trying to buy a house. He lives way out east. I don't give out everybody's locations, but he does. He lives way out east, and so he bought this house, and he said, I still like to be part of the team. Well, I think this was right after the Beech Grove ice storm, and I told him, I said, I got an idea. I said, I got a great one, because he would sometimes, if we were deployed somewhere, because he worked for me in the fire service, he worked for me as a lieutenant and then made captain. He ran all of our logistical support. And I told him, I said, we used to pop him in dispatch when we need the dispatcher who may be more medically trained, and Kevin became a dispatcher. He became whatever we needed him. He was a floater. He did anything we needed him to do, he did. So I told him, I said, I've got this great idea. What if we had a paranormal dispatch? And he was thinking more about long-range radios and repeaters. I said, no. I said, just where you can watch the weather, watch things. If we need to know where something's at the last minute that wasn't included in the research, we can reach out to you and ask you to find this for me. And he thought that was great. So we've kept him on. He's been on ever since. He has some health issues, so he doesn't always go out with us any longer. He hasn't gone out in a long time, probably won't. But what he does is so significant. It's worth having him. We don't need him to go out. We need him to be there watching us. They always said in the fire service, if you're working the accident, that's the reason they always put the IC commanders away from the scene. Because if you're working the scene, you get tunnel vision, and you're all about watching the scene. You can't focus, and you can't think rationally and logically in some instances because you're too focused. So that gave him the spot to be out of it. I think he does a great job. He a lot of times people don't know he's doing it because he only talks to me and Tim, usually on the phone if something comes up. But I tell you what, he's done really well. So, but now you guys, everybody here has been in heavy rain, right?
Well, sure.
Yeah. I mean, we've all at one point have to. I always loved it when it came a heavy storm. I was teaching my kids to drive because I drag them out and I go, look, you got to drive in this. You can't pull the car over if it starts raining and wait for it to stop. I mean, it's not how it works. I think it's really important to know that's a possibility, and you need a plan. If you got more than one vehicle, we do what we call convoy class, and we keep the vehicles together, usually by phone, but we decide, hey, what's the, and it's going to sound bad, but what is the ability of the weakest driver? If one of the two can't drive in rain, then none of us drive in the rain. We pull over. Maybe an underpass. If we're lucky, we get off an exit, find someplace to get coffee, and let it pass. But you should be prepared. You should have a weather report at the very least for the night you're going out. And it wouldn't hurt if you're a small team or you're just an independent investigator. Somebody needs to know when you're going, where you're going, and how to get a hold of you if you don't show up in a day or two,
Do you ever share the route you're going to take? Do you ever pre-plan the route? And so that, that way, if the team is lost or something, they at least know where to start looking.
Yeah. And, it's a funny thing. We have some software, and I'll tell you, it's called everything they test after they turn it loose to the public, they changed the name. Citizen was a different software before that, and we in Homeland Security here tested it. But we have one called Life 360, and it had a mixed review when they brought it out and told every one of our guys on the team, hey, not the paranormal team, but fire service, they need to put this on their phones. Well, they found out firemen are just like kids or anybody else. They don't go anywhere without their phone. And so it tracks the phone. And you can go and I can look on a map. And I can tell you right now where Kevin's at. And it shows on the map. Now, only anybody still left on the map is me and Heather and Kevin. And I think Kevin has some of his family members on a different channel. It has channels like radio. But he can actually get the GPS location. And the neat thing about this software was, I think I paid $11 a month for it. But I can hit an emergency button. And it's got a certain list to contact to people, and it will give them my GPS and my street location of where I'm at. So that way they can track me down. And I did include my daughter for a while. She was she worked for a Shelbyville newspaper. She doesn't live in this state any longer, but she worked for them, and she had to do deliveries at night of people that, carriers that had problems or called in sick or anything. And she was out by herself, this female, at 2 or 3 in the morning. And so, and she knew I knew the sheriff of Shelby County. I knew some of the folks there. So she would keep that app. So if anything happened, I knew her last location. Even if they threw the phone away, wherever the phone was at, I got the tracking right to that point. And so when they did bring it out, they called it Life 360. It's worked really well. So Kevin knows, and I will tell him, I don't give him personal information about the case because he's not an active member of the team. So what I do is I say, okay, we're going to Newcastle, and we will be there off of probably toward the middle of town, and I need you to just keep an eye on that area, or we're going to LaPorte, or he knew we were going to LaPorte. And so I'll never forget, because he called the car and he says, you got heavy rain there. And I go, no shit. And, I'm driving it. And I go, is that what you called to tell me? I go, you got any better news? He goes, no, not really. He says, there's a tornado in your area too. Thanks. I go, anything else? I said, and he says, well, no, I'm just be careful. And I said, I want you to know. And I said, how close is the tornado? And he told me, and I kind of relayed that to Jennifer. But Jennifer brought that up. She said, make sure you put that in, because that was the first time she'd ever been in a really awkward situation with storms. And, I think a good weather report, when I say a good one, weather meteorologists aren't really good about being accurate or caring about being accurate these days. It still pays well if they're not. So one thing I'd say is, before you go out the door, double check it. Have somebody on your team double check it. And this applies to going to see Aunt Lily, to, traveling for the holidays. You should have an idea where you're going.
Do you have a particular app that you like to look at?
I have one, and it's actually an old app, and but I like it because it has the best radar. And I tell you, it's called KEYC First Alert, and it's some weather station, I think in Kansas, but they have the best app for radar. And I overlay both satellite and reflective Doppler. So when you look at the maps, and it has real nice encoding, you can change up the different things you want to see, or how much landmarks you want to see, and does have about a 6-hour software projected travel of the storm. So you can run it, and it'll give you its estimated travel. I like that one real well, and it's free, which makes it kind of nice. I mean, you have to pay for a lot these days. The other one is WeatherWise, but all that does is that's just an alert system. It's tapped into the national alert system. I was trying to remember the actual frequency, but it sets off all the towers, and it's a broadcast network in case of nuclear attack, tornadoes, you name it, they come across it. Well, I found out afterwards that app does that already, so I really didn't need the extra app. But that's the two I kind of keep on there. Now, you've got some, don't you, Heather?
No.
Okay, I thought you had an app you were looking at that was different than mine.
I don't think so.
You mean you go your whole day without a weather app on your phone? I could never.
Hell, I watched too.
I use too much
I use
anxiety.
Google Weather.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And it was whatever came with my phone. Google Weather.
I knew you used a different app. Well, I get up in the morning, and the first thing I do is check out the weather or the national or the local forecast. I really don't care about the news. I want to know about the weather.
I downloaded it.
I don't know if that's a mark of getting old or what, but I do. And then later the afternoon, a lot of times if I'm sitting down for lunch or something.
I just ask Alexa usually.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah, she is available. But yeah, and I'll watch it that night before I go to bed to see what the next day's going to be like. So, I mean, that's not uncommon for me.
After they got rid of What Should I Wear, I stopped really caring.
Yeah, she liked that app in Alexa where she get. Now they have one, but it's not as good as the original. But it'll make suggestions for her to wear, and but they do have a fairly decent weather forecast. They had a real nice piece of software, and they got done away with it, but it actually tapped in the NEXRAD radar, which is the actual NOAA system. And I mean, you got live feed, but the problem is the app. If you get live feed, you still have to have some sort of application to translate that in software variables and show you maps and overlays. And they had it all. But at first they said they were going to charge for it. And I said, yeah, I'll buy that. And then it just went. Now, Kevin, he uses actually a pay app they use in the fire service. And it's a first responder. And it taps right into all the NEXRADs. And he'll send me, matter of fact, he just sent me earlier. Apparently today he is watching the weather and fixing corned beef and cabbage. So he sent me some pictures of that.
He's a little early for that, isn't he?
Yeah, but I think he may have to work St. Patrick's Day, the high holy holiday. So he actually has to work it. So, and I was looking to see here. Kevin will send me stuff both on Messenger and texting, so I have to remember which one he was on the last time. But anyway, he'll send me weather throughout the day. Yeah, here we go. There's our weather forecast. So that's just an old habit. He doesn't care. He does it for me as a favor. So he'll send me weather a couple times a day. And then this is his corned beef and cabbage he's working on. He sent me pictures of that, so I know. But yeah.
I usually just turn it into pastrami.
Yeah. We've done that many times and then smoked it. But anyway, having a good app makes a difference. Now, our radios have a weather alert built into them, and so it will trigger and set off a siren on the radios, and it's only happened one time. But we also carry a weather alert that whoever's working the dispatch monitors the weather alert. Even at Randolph County, I had the alert sitting there and on just in case. So tornadoes are probably the biggest risk there, or sheer winds coming in. Heat index going the other direction, that's the other thing. We ran into that. Waverly was probably the one that I remember the best, and you all got to, go through that. And we learned, one, we should always carry water bottles. It was a miserable mess. It was humid. The humidity you cut with a knife is like 80% humidity, or at least felt like it.
Oh yeah, that was miserable. It was it was like you were hoping a ghost would come and get you, get near you to lower the temp.
Just cool off.
We just scared the hell out of them. Everybody get in the cold spot, quick!
Over here,
Don't move. If you can hear us, don't move. Yeah. That was miserable. And I tell you, the big thing there is you can't.
Waverly should invest in a wet bulb.
Yeah.
What?
Go ahead, tell them what it is.
What is a wet bulb?
So in the Army, probably the Navy did it too.
Yeah.
It's a system for telling you how dangerous the hot weather
determines heat index.
Determines the heat index.
Yeah.
So
in the Navy, they'll strip you down to skivvies. In other words, T-shirts and your trousers, and that's the highest heat level.
Yeah. So in the Army, They have you unblouse your boots and unroll your sleeves because loose clothing keeps you cooler. Mm-hmm. And if it's highest is black, and at black you work for 10 minutes and then you go in the shade or rest or cool off for 10 to 15 minutes.
Each color has its own amount of work to rest ratio. Now, we actually could go into PT gear if it went to black. And it didn't happen very often, but it's still that's how they have it. What I call a wet bulb is they actually have a device and they measure the moisture off of it to determine the heat range. So all the surfaces have it. I'll be honest, I only remember a couple of times that happened, but I remember one, we were up at Great Lakes for some reason, and that morning it was like 35 or 40 degrees, all the wind coming off. By that afternoon, it was 101. And we went from one extreme to the other, and I thought our weather in Indiana was bad till I saw that.
Most southern bases have them.
Okay.
The further north of the Mason-Dixon line you go, the less you'll see it, obviously. Yeah. But Kentucky is kind of in that in-between space where it gets hot, muggy. So that's like Waverly probably ought to invest in something like that.
Well, I'll tell you the one thing, and we didn't have it. Now, we did this when we were running EMS for roller derby, was we carried mixes for water, and they make some called IV, and it really is probably very close to it's not really a saline solution, it's electrolyte solution. It tastes palatable. I don't care what flavor you get, you're drinking IV juice. Face it, it's not going to be the great, but it does work well. And you pour that into your water bottle.
Liquid IV?
Yeah, liquid IV. There's Gatorade makes some G2 hydration tubes, and there's powder you put in the water. But I know the next time we go, I've already made a packet for that and put it into our gear. So, we'll have that. Because a lot of people, I think, were, especially now, I'll tell you, I think I was one of them, was suffering from dehydration. And because I take medications that automatically dehydrate me anyway, and you add heat, and oh boy, that makes it a fun time. I know we went back on the first break. I looked at the guy behind the counter. I go, as long as it's cold and wet, give me 2 of them. And he reached over and laughed, and he gave me a Gatorade and something else. And I went back and drank both of them. And it was just that bad. But, people have to watch that, because the bad thing is when you're investigating places like Waverly, has no heat, no air, no electricity, you're on your own. The other thing we're testing is these personal fans. They came out last year, they fasten on your belt and they blow up under your clothing. And actually, they seem to work. I figured it might be a gimmick. I've always been a little superstitious after my days of youth when I read comic books and ordered those X-ray glasses and they didn't work. Yeah, it was kind of a letdown. So
this is like a bed jet for your pants or something?
It actually is. It's like that, without the tubing. It's just a little box. It has a slot on the top that blows the air up.
Yeah, nice.
Sucks in. So you got a clip, and you clip it on your belt, and you put your shirt over it so it can blow up through your shirt. And it actually puts all that air in there. And the other thing I'm thinking about getting all of us is black water bottles that we can carry and clip on, might put spirit on them. And we've been talking about that ever since we came back from Waverly. So everybody keeps a water bottle handy. And you don't drink out of that when you're in the break room. You drink out of whatever you can get there, because they lock you out of the break room in between sessions. And that gives you time. That gives you a bottle to work off of. And, they make belts and things that carry it. We're looking at all that to make proposals to the group. But I'll tell you, having the bag of the IV stuff, it doesn't taste so bad when you're really dehydrated. But yeah, and we're gonna bring some of that down, give everybody a chance to try some of that, and we'll do that in coming meetings. So, but having that makes a difference. It'll keep you from getting. You're still gonna sweat. You're still gonna be thirsty, but at least you'll have something to replace electrolytes. And I think the guy I felt worse for at Waverly was poor old Andrew, because he had to drive after we'd taken him through the heat and bake, shake and bake, and then we'd take him out and expect him to drive home. So that made it rough. Fog, we talked about earlier, when 2011, when we had that. I tell you what, fog is almost one I would say, find a restaurant, it's open all night, pull over a Denny's and stay there until it breaks a bit, because there's no way, and correct me if anybody's got any ideas, but there's no way I know of to get around fog.
You were a firefighter forever. What were the worst accidents you had seen? Were the ice, fog, rain?
Usually fog, honestly. Fog and, well, ice. I guess it'd be a tie-up between the two. I remember Eddie one time, when him and I lived together, between our divorces, he turned around and he looked at me and says, "We need a DVD player." I go, "What for?" Because I think we own 5 DVDs between us. And I told him, I said, we got computers, we can play them in them. What do you want? Nothing to him. It was a Black Friday deal. He said, "I'm going to get up and I'm going to go." And that Black Friday, they came the worst fog. And he looks at me, he says, "You're trained to drive in this." "Yes." And I said, "That's right." And I said, "I'm also trained, if I don't have to, keep my happy ass at home." And I said, "I'm not going out." And he says, "Well, I'm going to drive down." He had to drive. We lived over in Fountain Square, and he was going to drive down to this Kmart in 31, or I think it was a Kmart. Kmarts are still open then. And they had a sale on these things. So he's going to drive down and get it. And, it was really funny because it took him an hour and a half, which was a 20-minute drive, but it took him an hour and a half. He almost got hit several times. He told me he witnessed 8 accidents on the way down there. And I said, "Now you know why I didn't want to leave the house." And so it took him about a little over an hour to get back. And I'll never forget, he come in and set it down. He says, "Can you hook that up?" I go, "I'm trained in the same computers you are. I don't know a damn thing about that." And I remember I said, "I'll have to read the instructions like you would." And, but yeah, he went back to bed because he was worn out. That was the only trip he made the day, but it took almost the entire day to get there and back. I mean, the worst accidents we see generally are either ice or fog, because there's no wind in those, Your vehicle, we always had large vehicles. They just slide in a heavier way than the lighter vehicles. That's it. I mean, ice is ice. And, they do make some devices for the new fire engines, and this is helping. A lot of places outlaw them. In the state of Indiana, you cannot have studded snow tires, and you cannot put on tire chains unless there's a blizzard condition announced, because it tears up the road. The fire service has these nifty little gadgets you can put on the engine, and you hit a button, they come down, they have a spinning set of chains, and it goes right underneath the tire, so no matter how that tire moves, there's a chain underneath each time it hits. And it doesn't stay underneath there, or you don't have to hook them up. It's just automatic. But the city of Indianapolis says, no, we can't do that. It tears up the roads. So unless it's, and no fire department's going to put a line budget in for those things. They are expensive to put on each piece of apparatus. And they only go on the large stuff that has large wheel clearance. You can't put them on a Suburban or Expedition. But, that's the bad thing about it. They don't allow that. And if they had that, it'd be a lot easier on ice. You get better grip. Now, I've got a set of chains, but now I have plastic chains. And these are the coolest thing. They're like a giant wire tie, and they've got like 1,500 pounds braking strain. And you basically need a rim that has holes around the side, and you slip them through the hole and wrap them over the tire, and you hook them up. And they're disposable, but they're like $14 a set for 4 tires.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, I keep them in the van in case we get stuck. And recently I found out they have rubber tire chains, because I got my tractor stuck the other day with a snowblower on it. And, the guy from John Deere, they're low to help. They'll help you spend your money any way they can. Hey, he tells me, he says, you need tire chains. I said, I have asphalt drives. I can't do it, tear them up. He says, well, get the rubber ones. I go, pardon? He goes, yeah, they make rubber tire chains. That won't hurt a thing. And basically, they're like bungee cables. They go on the tire, and they have the metal chains on the sides. And they work great. You can and I've got those ordered for the tractor now. And I found out some other things to help with it. But anyway, the long and the short is there are stuff you can get if you look at. There's what they call a tire sock. And I've heard people say they work, say it don't.
Excuse me?
Yeah, it's a tire sock. It's the damnedest thing you've ever seen. It goes around the tire. And it looks like, God, how do you describe this thing? It's just like, to me, it looks like pantyhose that is cut into a donut, and you put it onto the tire, and it's supposed to give you grip. I couldn't decide if that would work or not, so I got the plastic ones. Now, I've never used the plastic ones, but, I've never had to. The house, we keep everything salted and everything, so it's not a problem. But I got them just in case of emergency would ever happen. We would need to get out of someplace. But they're orange, and I forgot what they're called, but they're plastic tire grips or tire chains is what they call them. And I've got a set of them. I'll show you guys when we're done on air. But it really, they're handy dandy in case of emergency, and they come in all different. That's the tire socks.
I'll
yeah,
be damned.
yeah. You just look those up. I'm sitting there. The bad thing is, I find that my worst addiction is
Amazon.
Well, it's not buying anything. It's just those assholes will throw up ads. If you look at anything, oh my God, God help you, because they'll find 50 things.
Don't Google nothing.
Don't Google anything because they'll drive you nuts. Oh, you viewed this 3 years ago. We thought you still might be interested, and they throw those things out. And the worst problem with me is I'll look at something and go, "What the hell is that?" And then I'll click on it to figure out what it is, and then they got you.
Kind of like, what is that? Oh, don't.
Yeah, and the time you clicked on I clicked on one. It was some sort of plasma cutter tool, and I was trying to figure out what it was. Now they've been throwing plasma cutters at me for, I don't know, for a month now. But that's a force of habit kind of thing. But I found the chains on a YouTube video. I was watching a YouTube video, and I'll tell everybody I watch Ringo Starr. He's a good guy. He gets a little carried away, some people think at times, but I enjoy. One thing is he knows a lot. He was a forestry firefighter for years, and so he came out with those. And I looked at those, and I thought, man, those are kind of cool, but I bet they're expensive as hell. Like I said, I paid $14 for 4 wheels. And they're disposable. I don't think they're reusable. You just cut them off with a pair of side snips or dikes or whatever, and just cut them off there. And but they're handy dandy. So and we'll talk a little more about that when we get down to the car stuff, because I got some things I keep in my vehicle. But fog and ice, you can't really. That's one I would say cancel the investigation, reschedule it, stay off the road. You don't want to lose a team member. I've in my career in fire, I've lost a couple people and had to tell their spouses they aren't coming home. My worst one was I lost a guy right before Christmas Eve, and he had kids. And I mean, that's real rough. So I don't want anybody ever getting hurt. I will cancel in a heartbeat. Meetings are not that important. You can always have them. You can have them by teams, or you can have them another day. Meetings. Even though I love seeing everybody, it's not worth the hassle. So, hail, the best thing to do there is, if you don't want to replace the windshield or you don't have good windshield coverage, is I've driven under a Hardee's one time. I'll never forget it. Scared the hell out of me. I was in a department vehicle, and we just slid in under the Hardee's drive-through. There was nothing there, and the lady goes, she goes, I said, I'm sorry, but we're trying to get out of the hail. And she goes, no, that's okay. You guys can stay here all you want. Then they brought us coffee, which I felt bags were borrowing their drive-through. But we were on the radio reporting the hail at that point, and we were out of district. We were on the way back when we got hit. It was down 31, down toward Whiteland when it hit us. But hail, there's not much you can do. Don't go out into the vehicle. There's nothing you can do for the vehicle. There's greater chance of you getting hit and knocked out unconscious by hail. I mean, there really truly is. So you want to avoid that. Snow, well, it kind of goes back to the ice thing. If it's going to be deep enough, don't go out. Four-wheel drive's great, but I guarantee you, just like we were going to do a test of some equipment, and it was right before the big storm hit last week, and I called the individual in charge of the building. I said, we're not going to be testing equipment. He says, ghosts don't come out in the snow. I said, no, but ghost hunters don't. And not that kind of snow. And we called it off, and I kind of figured I'd get a call from you. An extreme cold is kind of like the heat. Prepare for it. Make sure. I mean, one of the best investments I bought.
And don't forget to drink water in the cold, too.
Yeah, because you'll dehydrate just as much as you will in the summertime. And the liquid IV, and because you'll sweat. And you got to remember, when you start peeling off, that's the dangerous part. Wind gets to your wet clothing, that can cause any kind of hyper and hypothermia conditions. One of the best things I ever bought was a set of electric gloves. Man, I love those.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, they weren't bad. They were like $50, and they got 3 heat settings and a little battery pack you put in there, and you can recharge them. Man, that's the problem I always had when I cleared snow. My hands got cold. Everything else was fine. Oh, my God, they're worth it. I mean, they are very nice. I really have enjoyed having those gloves. So something to think about. I mean,
you're welcome.
Yes. My wife is the one that wanted me to get them. She picked them out and said, this is what I want you to get because I'm afraid you're going to lose your hands. And the one thing I will say is if it's that bad, you shouldn't be outside to begin with. If you're in a building that doesn't have heat and it's going to go severe, by God, don't show up unless there's a way you can heat those spaces. If you have to, and there's just no way around it and you won't change your mind, just like with the heat condition, you're out for so long, 15 minutes, back for 15, 20 minutes to warm up, and that's the way you should handle that. Health risk. And I don't want anybody telling their health risk, but I mean, everybody has certain conditions. Some of those can be exacerbated by heat, cold. Think about that. If you have a health condition, you should be in charge of your own situation, and you shouldn't go out if there's a problem. Injuries on site. Now, we have an emergency plan already in place. So if we get someone that falls, gets hurt, God forbid, breaks a limb, cut, whatever, we go into emergency mode, all lights are turned on till we can get to that individual, and we treat them on site. The investigation comes to a halt. We call it out on the radio so everybody knows we have an emergency. We have a full med kit, and we need to talk about that too. You need a first aid kit. One of the things you should have of some kind. I'm going to tell you there's several things that I would, no matter what, I would put into a first aid kit. If you're not a trained medical person, get a decent first aid kit, and then if you make sure and talk to your members, see if anybody has a allergic reaction to bee stings, bites. That's real important. And if they do, find out if they have an EpiPen. Have them show you how to use the EpiPen where it's at. I always carry Primatene Mist. That's actually epinephrine, and you can use that in a pinch if you have to. So I always keep one in each one of the kits, and it's good for a couple of years. I've changed them out. They're not cheap. They're about $30 a piece, but they're epinephrine. They're just a lower dose, and it will at least help keep somebody alive if the person will react to it. People can go very anaphylactic, and the problem with a lot of that is people that are just basically trained in first aid don't realize that. So when we come in, and you guys remember this because it wasn't that long ago, we have you fill out a medical form. Now, the only body that sees that's actually me, but I need to know, and I do talk to Tim about it because Tim is our other medical person on site, so that he knows if someone and it's only if you're diabetic, okay, that's probably going to be told to the group at some point. We're not worried about that. We're worried about if you have allergic reactions, you have a heart condition, if you have things that can, become agitated during an investigation. Another thing is bite sticks. And these are little liquid sticks. The military used to give them to you in vials. I thought that was really cool. Remind me of the, what was the poison the Nazis used to use?
Cyanide?
Yeah, cyanide. It's like a cyanide capsule. You break the glass on the inside of this protective container, and then it goes to the end, and it's got camphor and things to kill the sting or bite. But I always thought they were cool. Anyway, they still make those, by the way, but they do make a bite stick, and I keep those in the cars. And if you get stung or you get bit, and it's a painful bite like a fire ant, this will immediately remove. It'll desensitize the area.
Takes the sting out.
Basically, yeah. And it goes in, and it's a antiseptic kind of thing as well, and it'll help clean that out. And it's just a little dauber thing. It's in a little stick with a little clip for your pocket. So always carry one of those. I tell you, if the basic stuff that comes in a kit is fine. I always add a little bit of what they call Coban, or they call it self-adhesive. Now, I'll tell you a cheap place. Don't go to the drugstores and buy that. It's outrageous. Go to your farm stores. That's what they use on the horses' legs for racing.
Yeah, we call it vet wrap.
Yeah, vet wrap, exactly. Mm-hmm. And it's dirt cheap. It's like $2 a roll, where they're charging $8 at CVS and Walgreens. So I go to Tractor Supply Company and it comes
Rural King.
Rural King, yeah. And it comes in some great colors. You can get colors you never thought existed, instead of that dull brown. I mean, you can get, I think we got some that are pink and purple and everything else, but it's cheap. You can throw it in a kit. It's worth having. I always recommend, these little hand warmers. They're chemically reactive hand warmers, and they're not expensive. They're called Heat. Yeah. Have you had them before? Hot hands. Okay. Have you guys ever used them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they last a long
in the horse barn.
time.
I use them all the time.
Well, and some of this stuff I've gotten used to because my grandfather was a blacksmith and a farrier, so he worked in barns all the time. And, the other thing that is nice to have is actually what they call udder cream. And that, that can help on a wound. If you've got an open lesion, it won't hurt it. You can put a little bit of that on there. And again, this is not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a shingle hung out. So, this is just, look it up yourself. Make sure it's safe before you do it. But I always carry those two items with us because those are things that, also it doesn't hurt to have a good, you can use some generic, oh God, I was trying to think Benadryl. My brain went silent. Yeah. Benadryl. Dollar Tree. They got it. It's cheap. You can pick it up. So that helps when you're having a reaction. There's some other products out there, but I'm just, these are things to think about you really should have in your kit. I see some of these guys that are preppers that show up with minor surgery kits. Yeah, you don't have to go that far. You probably shouldn't be, doing any kind of illegal operations. I would leave that to the medical specialist, but that will help you keep a patient stable, just a few items you have. And of course, the bite stick, one of the things we get out there is certainly mosquitoes. We can get stinging insects. And in our tripod bag, we carry hornet spray and spider spray or general bug spray. And we've had to use that a few times. But these are some things to think about and stuff to clean wounds. You want to make sure you don't have to have sterile water. You don't have to have saline. I mean, if you're going to get saline, go down and get some contact solution. I mean, the one that just has plain saline, a generic. You can use that. I just use water. That's what most people do. So any add-ons on the first aid kit? Anything anybody else can think of? I mean, if you have certain meds that you have to have, that's something you should probably carry with you.
That should be on your person.
That should be on your person. And again, if someone has an EpiPen, EpiPens come in a lot of different shapes. They're not always pen looking. Sometimes they look like a credit card. They're flat, and people carry them in their wallet. So they can be very, very, very hard to find if you're looking for them. Yeah. And, just good to know. Talk that out amongst yourselves. Don't violate anybody's personal, information, but, see what you can find out. Another thing is, because we investigate all over state of Indiana, if we have to call for an ambulance, usually 911 works pretty good, but we don't always know where we're at. And I know they had a sign up at Randolph Asylum when we were there, sanatorium. They had it up that told what number to call and what ambulance you'd be getting. And that's kind of handy to have. We don't do that, but probably should check that when we come in. We used to have a lead investigator form, and that was their job to fill out on site. We've got away from that. We need to get back to it because it talked about what kind of heating they had, where the electrical box was at. So that way, when we had stuff pop up, we can say, well, there was a high EMF. Where was the electrical box at? And just to see if that or a refrigerator or something could have caused it. So, and of course, we want to say don't drink and drive. So that goes without saying. Okay, so now we're at the vehicle, and before we get into that, I'd like to make a quick commercial. For those out there, we are going to be at the Crawfordsville Paracon October 24th and 25th at Crawfordsville, Indiana. Admission is free. They do have VIP events. There are going to be speakers. Yours truly will be speaking. I think it'll be a fun time, and I'd like to get everybody to come out. Again, that'll be at Crawfordsville Fairgrounds. That is on October 24th and 25th. So, all right. Well, let's talk about vehicles. And, we use a random amount of vehicles. Usually we use our van because it holds more people, equipment. But we also, bring in other vehicles. But have your vehicle ready, and I'm not doing a commercial for mobile, but, it's a good idea to change your oil regularly. I mean, it keeps the engine happy, and people don't realize how long that will prolong your vehicle. I think ours has 267,000 miles on it. Oh, yeah. And I have it maintained all the time. It's that PM thing comes in the fire department, the Navy, where we're going to call from. But, it's got that much on it. Oddly enough, my antique truck only has 66.5 miles on it. Original miles, it's a 95. And, but the van's got a horrific amount. I was thinking the other day, we're going to have to get another vehicle. But she runs fine. But if I told you the whole list of stuff, I've redone the transmission, replaced the flywheel. I mean, we've rebuilt that for the Dodge brothers. So, but just general maintenance, don't leave on an investigation with your engine light on. If you don't know what's wrong with it, don't do that. It can strand you, especially if you go into we've had to go into some country areas that we are way out of nowhere. And if we had a breakdown, it'd be a problem. Just between us here round table wise, what is the most common breakdown you experience on the road, would you say, in your opinion?
Flat tire.
I second that.
Okay. Anybody got anything different?
Overheating.
Yep.
Overheating.
Yeah,
Okay.
those are the top two.
Yep. So, and I'm going to add one in, dead battery. Occasionally you get a short in the battery. Now, a battery, if you got the engine running, it won't recharge it, but it will allow you to run the vehicle for a certain amount of time until it dies again, and you can jump it again. I'm not a mechanic either. I want to put that out there. But anyway, I carry in our vehicle a mini, it's a mini porta power pump. And this thing mini porta power jump starter. It will start a 6.8 liter diesel engine, and it's no bigger than slightly larger than my cell phone. You can run laptops off of it. It's great. I keep it charged. It goes in a little small package in there. Now, that's great for the battery. Now, we talked about flats. Flats are something people get these days. Now, I think maybe in our lifetime, we'll eventually see the run flat tires and on everything, but right now we're not seeing that except for the high dollar cars. I carry a patch kit, and there's two types of patch kits. There's the old-fashioned one, which is what I have, and you find the hole if you can. Usually you'll hear it whistling, and you move the car around till you get it, and then you take this reamer, which is like a file, and you pull out whatever you got with a pair of pliers, you ream it out real good, and you put a patch in with glue. And there's YouTube videos show you how to do that. It's not hard. We did that one time. We ran over something. It was a nail in the road, and we weren't far from our original house. And we pulled into a church, and I had to jack it up a little bit, find the spot, patch the tire. And then when you patch it, you need to be able to re-air it. Now, most of the kits I have, patch kits, have this cool little thing. It is a CO2 canister from like a BB gun, and you plug it in and it'll air it up. But I also carry a portable air device, and it will do a 32-pound tire in like 6 minutes. And it'll air that tire back up and get you back on the road temporarily. I've had tires go out numerous times. It just happens. But having ability to air the tire up and ability to patch the tire. Now, they also got something new, and I haven't seen enough feedback to be sold on it, but they got these things that look like screws with rubber on them.
I saw that on just the other day.
Yeah, and they show you, you take out whatever screws in there, whatever holes in there, as long as it's small enough, you can run these in. They're pre-coated with glue, and they're pre-coated with rubber, and you just stick them in there and take a drill or a screwdriver and run them in, it seals it right off. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Now, the thing to remember is that's just strictly for punctures. If you cut a 2-inch gash, you're stuck. You better make sure and that's the other thing. Make sure your spare is there. Yeah. I always make sure when the mechanic changes the oil, I always ask him to check the air in the spare. If he can, drop it down a little bit, make sure it looks okay. Our spare is in a horrible place in the minivans. They put them in the middle of the van. You have to go through the console. You have to take the car apart, to drop it. And of course, I'm sure it's a donut. But I don't know very many have full-size tires anymore. I mean, with the other vehicles, my Suburbans always had full size. They were terrible because they used the same concept from the 70s into the late 90s. They used into the early 2000s. They used these winches, and then you have to winch them down. That winch, only time you use that winch is to lower the tire in case of emergency, which is probably once or twice in the car's life. So that winch works about as well as a union worker on strike. I mean, it isn't going to work. And I've had to replace those things. I've had to cut the wire. And, to get it down, make sure you know how to get your tire down. Take it down once, see how it works. That's how you discover if the winch is bad or there's a problem. Better to know it now before you get on the road, And I'm one of those crazy people. Every year going into winter and coming into spring, I do a vehicle check. I check all the lights on it. I make sure the fluids are all good. I check all the flashlight batteries inside, make sure all that stuff works, so I'm never out without a working piece of equipment. But that's one thing I want to bring out. Make sure you have at least a way of air up the tire and patch the tire. Those are cheap. The patch kits, you can get one at Menards that has the reinflator in it. I think the whole thing's like $12-15. I keep them in each vehicle. Getting the lug nuts off. And if you're not, Hercules or part of the American Gladiators, sometimes that can be because they put them on with an impact. Now, I tell you what I did.
They're not supposed to.
Yeah, I know they're not supposed to, but that doesn't mean anything. If you're, depending on where you have your oil changed, I don't want to pick on anybody in particular. I have a personal mechanic. He changes them, and he asked me, how do you want them put on? Well, I told him impact, but I'll tell you why. I carry an impact, a battery operated impact in the vehicle. Yeah.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, well, I decided I'm getting too damn old to fight with that T-bar, and all I need is more time in the physical therapy. And I'll tell you, ATI does not consider alcohol medication. Anyway, but yeah, so I couldn't believe I offered them some too. I mean, I'm sharing. But anyway, I carry an impact, and I carry a set of nuts to fit about any kind of. So that way, I can jack it up. I don't have to fight with a wrench. I can hit it with the impacts, and it's a lot faster changing it. Now, I have to check the battery in that. I switch the battery out. Every spring and fall, I'll check the battery. I'll pull that. It works off of a power tool battery, and they make them. They work off DeWalt and everything else, Milwaukee batteries, wherever you want. And I just switch the battery out, make sure I've got a good one in there. Those are things, and some basic stuff, a pair of channel lock pliers, a pair of wire cutters, a Phillips and flathead screwdriver. That's just some basic stuff to keep in your vehicle. And I know that's nothing paranormal, but by God, if you're going to go out and do this, you want to make sure you got a way of getting home. We were just talking earlier about the plastic snow chains. I don't know about the socks. I can't judge in on those. I mean, they get a lot of stars, but I just getting them on looks like it would be a jewel. And, so these you just slip through, and you may have to move the tires one time forward, but, take a look at those. Think about having those in there.
Just plain old clay kitty litter.
Yeah, a bag kitty litter in the back can help you out a lot. And you don't have to buy tire chains. Just the kitty litter alone will help. Another thing, have a fluorescent vest. This is something that, I've thought of many times, and we had a ton of them because we owned a general contracting company. And, but the vests, I still give them away because we don't use them anymore, but we had like 30 or 40 of them. They're not expensive. And have either reflectors. I don't recommend flares anymore, having been on the fire department, because if you get near a vehicle leak or something, you can set that scene on fire real quick. We always said the reason they outlawed them, one was because of fire risk in countries or states, not countries, but states where they have high, wildland fire risk. And there's also times I can remember, maybe, where guys was directing traffic with them, or if you toss them the right way, it creates burns on the paint job. And so when you're being an asshole to that fireman that's holding that flare, he's sitting there doing this the whole time on your door to remind you that, you should just move the vehicle down like he asked you to. So I think that could have had something to do with them. They make these little battery ones now, and I have them. They go around circles. They're kind of cool. Or get you some reflectors. They sell reflector kits. I pick them up at the garage sales all the time, and I realized I don't need to anymore. I own about 8 sets, and they're semi-reflectors. I don't think I've ever used them once. I bought one compact set for the antique truck, but I carry reflectors. That just helps somebody know they're coming up on you less after you getting hit.
Guess what everybody's getting for Christmas?
Yeah, that's your new one. Everybody gets road reflectors. Yep. Anyway, but those are some things to think about. Other things to think about is having some snacks in, just keeping them in the car. In the summertime, I hear people say, well, keep water in. You can. I mean, I'm always afraid I'll forget about it, but we always have drinks. If we're going a long place, we usually take a cooler and put water in it. Sometimes a change of socks or even a change of clothes. I mean, I know we keep spare sweats in our get-home bag. We have a get-home bag, and it's designed to get us home. And if we're out somewhere and we break down and we're nowhere near anybody and we're, more than a couple miles walk, we've got a couple MREs there we can eat. We've got, we've got clothing. So until somebody, we can call and they say, well, it'll be a while before we can get there. At least we can sustain pretty well. So any other ideas? Anybody got any ideas of things that should be in the car?
During the wintertime especially, I'll keep Carhartt bibs in the car.
Oh, yeah. Those are worth it.
Yeah, I always have those in the car during the wintertime.
Well, if we're going anywhere big, I put her bibs in. I use my fire gear instead of the bibs because I got them in there. And it's just easy. I keep the turnout coat in there, but I put the bibs in and the bunker boots. So in case, I don't know how many times, and cops won't go down unless they have to. If a car slides far enough off and it's buried down in the snow, you're going to have to wade down to it. And, it's just nice to have those on because they're insulated. Yeah, they're worth having. The Carhartt bibs are good. And if you have to walk, that's what you want. You always want. We leave, and a lot of times I'll wear a vest and shirt because I'm too hot. But I always take a coat with me and put it in the car. Of course, I've always got the turnout jacket, but I make sure she has a coat with her. So if anything happens, we have to walk. We've got coats, so it works out okay. Anything else anybody can think of? No. Okay, fair enough. We're going to move on. The last thing is hoses, and unless you're mechanically inclined, I wouldn't say this, but I carry an emergency hose repair kit, and it has couplings for the most common size hoses, and so I could cut a hose if it had a hole in it, put the coupling in, and fasten it, and put a little water in, and get me to wherever I need to go. So I do carry those, but you got to remember, I used to go backwoods a lot, and in those areas, just trying to explain somebody how to come get you and what roads to take is bad enough. So it's easier sometimes to have that. Okay, moving on. We talked about the get home bag. There's tons of videos on get home bags. There's all kinds of things you can have. I mean, there's a lot of foods that have long shelf life. Vienna sausages, energy bars, potted meat for those that don't like it, but hey, it's there. Crackers. If you buy the MREs, they come complete with all that nasty food that you don't like, all conveniently packaged for you. Also, the heater in them can be used to help heat your hands and so forth. Good gloves, work gloves, you always want those. Those are worth having. So, okay, and then look at your team members. Are they properly outfitted? Now, we wear, Spirit shirts, and I love that because it shows professionalism. But when it comes down to coats, I'm not going to require you to have anything, including your underwear, embroidered. I mean, that's a little silly to have that much.
Next.
Yeah, that's next. Yeah. New regulation. Yeah.
Made me think you might already have done it.
Yeah.
What was that face, Eric?
Well, when I first met,
he's like,
no reason.
Wait, what?
Yeah. When I first met Richard Estep, first thing he knew, because someone had told him I was a fire chief, and I didn't know it. And he would set me up before I got to his booth, and he looked at me and he says, "So where do you wear your bugles?" And I go, "I got them embroidered on my skivvies." And, he just started grinning real big because they used to say that chiefs were so arrogant they wore their bugles on their underwear. I do have a T-shirt on the front of it. It says, "Why? Because I'm the chief. That's why." And it says that on the back as well. But no, I think, we always said, hey, just have a black jacket with no reflective material. Have a good black jacket. They make a ton. Now, I'm not making a commercial for Bearskin unless they send me one. But I tell you what, the Bearskin ads are getting better and better. They have a new one out now, about their tacking puffer jacket. So I find this amusing. But we have several we use. There's some that we get from Voodoo Tactical and other places, but they're warm. We're not looking at looking cool. We want to feel warm first and foremost. We can look cool at the same time. That's great. But if not, we want to be warm. So, it's very rare that we investigate someplace that requires winter coats. But I know we're going to be very shortly at the Hartford House. And I know some of that area doesn't have heat. That's the reason at Waverly they don't do winter investigations, because there's no heat, no way of clearing all that out. So, as a matter of fact, they are hiring anybody in Louisville that would like to work at the Waverly Sanitarium. They are sending out. I got a personal invitation wanting me to come work for them, and yeah,
that's a bit of a haul.
Yeah, the drive is a problem. But anyway, I wouldn't do that. Wasn't that interested? But I thought it was funny. So anyway, look at your clothing. Make sure you got good clothing and you're dressing appropriately for the investigation. I do carry mechanics gloves, and I keep a set for me and Heather both in our bag. And I do that in areas where they have problems with large spiders and things like that. It helps protect your hands. If you're reaching or having to, hold on the wall or something, it keeps that from being a problem. Of course, we talked about the hot hands. We keep those in there. There's, we keep some snacks in our bag, and that's always helpful. So I think those are the things we need to look at, and certainly have a few spare snacks for the ride home. That's a good one. The problem with stopping to eat, and I've always told people this, whoever's driving, if you eat too big a meal, you get drowsy.
Yeah,
So you don't want to eat a giant meal at Denny's. If you stop afterwards, you want to kind of be careful how much you're eating depending on who's driving. the last things to go over, we talked about weather reports, weather alerts. We talked about that early on. Make sure that, you get those. A plan B. Always have a plan B. So if you know the way up there and there could be rain, make sure you have a contingency plan. And during your investigation, you should have some people monitoring that. They should be monitoring what's going on because it changes. We talked about that before. It changes. So change of clothing is nice to have in there as well. And actually, I kind of jumped around here because I added the vehicle bag below. We've kind of talked about that, and I don't see anything I don't think I didn't cover. But again, the last thing I want to bring up is the central dispatch concept. Have somebody that's not on the investigation know where you're at, know when you're supposed to be back. Now, what I do with Kevin, and we do this when we travel, I'll notify him. Generally, we have a deal with Kevin that, I drive him to the airport. He parks his car here. He drives me to the airport and picks us up. And this started when I had two other good friends that can't tell time and have memory spans much like a gnat. And they'd strand him at the airport a couple of times. But we worked this deal out. And the nice thing there is when we travel, even if it's just by car, I will give him all where I'm going to be staying, how to contact me. And I tell him, if I'm not back within 8 hours, invoke our backup plan, because we have a dog and cat here. The cat could survive for a while, but the dog's going to need to go out and need to be fed. And somebody needs to find out where the hell we're at and what happened to us. So that's what I do. I swear, I send that to him, and then he knows to start looking. In 8 hours, I can contact him. So one of the first things I do is we drive in the garage coming home is I hit him up on the say, we're home, we're good. And that way, it stops, it breaks that program. But something to think about, I know Sarah has cats. You have dogs. Do you have cats too?
Nope.
You're just dogs. Okay.
Just dogs.
You always should have, you don't have somebody at home. You need somebody to back that up so they know they're there. Now, like in cases like the Hartford house, we put Czar in the kennel. That's not a problem because Kevin knows which kennel. He's got all that information, so he can go get the dog if necessary, or bring the dog here. Or contact somebody to make sure they can hang on to the dog till we get home. And those kind of have a plan. Think it through. Have a plan so they know that is a situation at hand. So, that's about all I have to add to this. Does anybody else think of anything else?
The only thing I would recommend is, in my experience, being a ghost hunter and going into these places, the places we've done are in pretty good shape. But the one thing I would say is, if you're going to a facility that's now abandoned, do a site survey in the day.
Yes.
Locate
the elevator shafts that don't have elevators. Yeah.
In a former life, I used to be a guide, and I was like, hey, guys, where are the really dangerous spots? And they're like, oh, just stay away from the corners and stuff. So I was like, I'm going to go during the day.
Yeah.
Stay away from the corners.
Or not in the corners.
The reason being is the corners were detached and falling. If you went in the corners, you would have fallen into the basement.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So always do that before you begin your investigation. Always do a site survey.
That's a good one. That is a good one because we always...
They kind of elaborated a little bit.
Yeah.
Other than just stay away from the corners.
Yeah.
At least even said it's bad or something like that. I mean,
stay away from the corners because you'll fall.
Yeah. No. Well, that's.
I mean, at least
that was implied. Obviously, after I did the review, and I'm just like, guys, what? I mean, how is this not condemned? So,
well, I tell you, you kind of wonder that. I mean, when they first opened Waverly, they had a couple elevator shafts there, and they've closed them since then and boarded them off, but they just had tape originally across them, caution tape. So, you think about it. We always said in the fire service, we put tape up, there's a reason. It's not for decoration, and that we want people out of that area, and you never know. I mean, what was the one we went to that the floor, you stepped in, we were someplace investigating, and when you stepped in, about 2 foot from there on out, the floor was questionable. And you could hear it creak a little bit, and you could see holes further up where they go all the way through the next floor. Nope. But they didn't have any tape across it. And somebody didn't know any better to walk up there and start across. And so, you got to be very careful what you run into. That's a good point. Ladies, you got any points you'd like to add? No?
No.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you've enjoyed this, but more than that, we hope that you take this to heart. Take a real good look at this. This is something that, the more I thought about this while I was watching it snow, and we got, 11, 12, I think we got 16 inches here in this part of Indianapolis during the storm. But, I mean, it's a time to think about what's ready and what's not. The thing is, if you spend a little time getting it ready beforehand, it'll make a big difference. The time to realize that you don't have it together is not the time that you turn around and...
Not while it's snowing?
Not while it's snowing, yeah. That's the time. So, so anyway, that is our episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and please continue to listen. And again, we are on YouTube. You can check that out. Well, I think we're almost got every episode on there. So, and we will at some point in doing, video as well. We're getting to there, so bear with us. So again, folks, thank you so much for listening. Good evening. It's time for the ghost story of the day, and tonight that's with me. This is from a book called Relax, It's Only a Ghost by Echo Bodine. Chapter 7, entitled The Ghost Was in Love. About 10 years ago, I received a call from a realtor who said the house he was trying to sell had been on the market for several months, and all the prospective buyers seemed frightened before they even got to the front door. Some would turn around and leave without going inside. Michael wasn't able to go this time, so I took along my good friend Mike Warnell. As we walked through the house, I couldn't see anything, but I could feel someone watching me from the third floor. As I approached the master bedroom on the third floor, I could feel an angry, cold energy standing around the corner. I had chills all over my body. I walked in the bedroom, and there he was, a male ghost standing on the side of the bed where the woman of the house slept. In my dialogue with the ghost, he told me his name was Bob, and he was in love with the woman who lived there. He didn't want her to move. I had already discovered that ghosts don't usually move with people when they move out of the house because they tend not to like or are frightened of change. And that's not so uncertain to other people. To keep his beloved from moving out, Bob had taken to standing by the front door to frighten anyone who came to see the house. Ghosts become obsessed with people, as people can, and this ghost named Bob thought he was very much in love with this woman. The woman then told me that she had had a couple of dreams about some man who was interested in her. In one dream, her wedding ring was removed and put on top of the bookshelf. When she woke up the next morning, she found that her ring was off. Because the shelf was so high, she had to get a chair to stand on it in order to see the ring was on the top of the bookshelf. There was no way this woman could have done all of that in her sleep. My guides directed me to have the woman tell Bob that she loved her husband and wanted Bob to leave her alone and go to the other side now. She did this, and then I talked to Bob about letting go and moving forward through the tunnel. He said he was lonely and wanted to be in love. I reassured him that could he find relationship on the other side. He seemed relieved and said he would be willing to give it a try. I directed him to look for the light and move toward that light. I saged the house from top to bottom to get rid of all the negative energy he might have left there. Before leaving, I reminded the homeowners not to talk about Bob for a few days while the house, at least he think he was missed and might come back. I called about a week later to see how things were going. Everything was going, and they had already sold the house. They asked if I would go check out their new house to make sure Bob hadn't gone over there, and I did, and he hadn't. He remained on the other side. Ghosts can be romantics, too. Sometimes a ghost gets really attached to someone on this side and can't let go. If you think a ghost may be smitten with you, be very direct and tell it to move on. If you're serious and it can sense it, it will move on. Thanks for listening to Ghost to Ghost. Again, I'm your host, Chief Lawson. You can find Ghost to Ghost on all major formats on the 15th and 30th of the month at midnight. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, maybe have a question or subject you'd like to ask about on air or be used on the show, please email us at ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com, ghosttoghost@spiritindiana.com. I want to thank my production staff on Spirit, Jennifer Verne, our research manager and our producer, and Heather Lawson, our trainer on Spirit and our podcast director, for helping make these podcasts possible. My chief of staff, Andrew Brooks, for his guidance and help on the scripts, and everyone else involved. Thank you so much. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and remember the truth is out there. Good night. Ghost to Ghost podcast and its contents is the property of Spirit Paranormal Ltd. All rights reserved. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. You may not, except with written permission, use or distribute its contents for commercial use. Spirit Indiana Paranormal, covering the Hoosier State since 2002, Indy's oldest parapsychology investigation group. If you're experiencing what you believe to be paranormal issues, reach out to us for help at www.spiritindiana.com or call our hotline at 317-883-9103. Again, that is www.spiritindiana.com or our hotline at 317-883-9103. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and the ones you love, and be safe out there.